So in this segment, we're going to be discussing, accusations of misogyny and sexism within Starmer's team. This is from former Transport Minister Louise Hay discussing this, and I've kind of discussed certain ministers that seem to always get attacked or briefed against certain people. We saw it with Sue Gray as well, a lot of jealousy towards her earning such a salary. So we'll have a listen to what Louise Hay has to say.
Number 10, because you have talked about a culture of male advisors briefing against female cabinet ministers. What do you mean?
Well, I'm just really fed up of opening the papers and reading briefing against my female former colleagues, and I was really angry at the weekend to see the response to the electoral defeat that we had suffered at the hands of Reform, to be that we should sack two female Northern cabinet ministers and two of our best communicators with those voters that we need to communicate with most. I think that does reveal that there are people working in Number 10 that are more interested in those kind of politics than they are about running the country.
But are you saying they're briefing against them because they're women and Northern and working class?
I only ever seem to read briefing against my female former colleagues.
What about Ed Miliband?
Ed does get briefing, that's absolutely right.
Ed Miliband was not blamed for the local election defeat. They blamed Lisa Nandy and Bridget Phillipson, who had nothing to do with it. You could argue Ed Miliband was more involved because of the Reform campaign attacking net zero, which is the only thing that Ed Miliband's really got going for him at the moment, beyond looking at Wallace. So all in all, like, Phillipson and Nandy had nothing to do with it. So throwing in Ed Miliband, that it makes sense, but in this context, like, I've not heard any briefings against him regarding their loss.
Wouldn't say that he gets it anywhere near as badly as my female colleagues do.
Okay, so what are you saying about that pattern of briefing then? Sexist, misogynistic? What's going on?
All of the above. I think there is a real problem where there are people that, as I say, that are more interested in that kind of politics than they are in rolling their sleeves up and getting on the job of running the country. That is not motivational to cabinet colleagues that are working really hard to try and deliver for the people of this country. And the kind of briefing that undermines them on a daily basis is not supporting the Prime Minister, and it's not supporting the Labour government.
So yeah, there's a big problem with briefings. We've discussed it previously. She kind of goes on to talk about her, the response to the government over local elections.
The tip of an iceberg, and that is not the lowest we can get. We could lose a lot more to Reform over the coming weeks, months and years.
This is one of the things where, like, there are more elections coming up that are bigger than the ones we just saw, in Scotland, in Wales, for example. This is the beginning of a lot of discontent, and voters are going to aim that straight at the Labour Party.
I think there has to be a recognition that we have to change course, and that was why I intervened when I did. I don't do it lightly, and I don't do it particularly happily, but I was really alarmed by the government's response on Friday and the message that they would go further and faster, because what voters need to hear is that they are being listened to and that they are being heard and that they have a government that is fighting on their side. So an economic reset at the comprehensive spending review that lifts taxes, particularly on wealth and assets.
She has talked about that on GB News as well, about wealth taxes and things like that, but ultimately I'm not sure how far this is actually going to go, in terms of pushing Labour in any kind of direction.
And starts spending in those kinds of communities and starts delivering right now and telling them and fighting for them on their side is absolutely necessary. But I am hopeful.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's going to happen. They're going to continue to kind of scapegoat immigrants, so yeah, I don't share any kind of optimism with her at all. And I got this from Jonathan Reynolds. I think that's him, Reynolds. Yeah, he was talking about, he condemns the briefing behaviour, but he doesn't recognise this kind of the accusations of sexism within government, which is hilarious because you're a white dude. Like, they're not going to brief against you because you're a good boy. You follow party line constant.
Well, look, I have no time for anyone who engages in this briefing behaviour. I never have. I think people on all sides of the political divide would say I'm not someone they would ever associate with that kind of activity. I think it's cowardly, and frankly, if I've got something to say, I'll come on a show like this and say it. So look, I condemn any of the kind of whispering that you get in politics behind the scenes, and I wouldn't accept the government has a specific problem with any kind of treatment of any one group.
You've had Starmer's team specifically brief against women constantly. Ed Miliband's the only dude I've seen get briefings against, and it's not that bad. The fact that you have Nandy and Phillipson being briefed against for your failures in local election is crazy to me.
Group of people within the cabinet or government. We're a government with strong women, particularly at every part of it, from the Deputy Prime Minister to the Chancellor to so many of my cabinet colleagues playing a major role. But I do believe politics should be always about respecting people, saying what we're about openly, candidly. Not
Just nonsense, absolute nonsense from this guy saying I don't see it or whatever. Like, it's 100% happening. Louise Hay, like the whole story about her phone. There was a situation where her she claimed for a phone that wasn't stolen. That's what it looks like anyways, right? She tried to get a new phone basically, and so that story was leaked by cabinet. Someone actively briefed against her because she went out against P&O Ferries, and then the government tried to get money from the owners of P&O Ferry, which I think are the Dubai government. They tried to get further investment from them. So that whole story broke because she had attacked a potential investor in the UK. That's it. They do brief mostly against women, to be honest. I think it's because women are easier targets for these dudes who are cowards. They know if they brief against dudes, someone will come after them. Someone will come over. They'll bring it to their desk and slam it and say, "What the hell, man? Do you have a problem? We can go outside." That's one of the reasons why you wouldn't brief against a dude. At least in my opinion, why they wouldn't. That's why they're always targeting women, easier targets for them. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.